Join us, brother, as we dive into the grim dark universe of Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, the sequel to 2011's third-person action game full of brutal, fast-paced combat, and it is just as bloody brilliant. No, literally, it is so bloody. If you are unfamiliar with the Space Marine series, do not worry, the story is pretty straightforward and you don't have to have played the original. Basically, Space Marines good, aliens, orcs, and just about everything else bad. Space Marines smash bad stuff with hammers and chainsaw swords. Got it? Good. Space Marine 2 continues the story of Lieutenant Titus, now a seasoned veteran, who returns to the battlefield to defend the Imperium from a new, terrifying threat, the Tyranids. A race of aliens with swords for arms that also carry swords. And guns. These alien invaders, driven by a hive mind, are swarming the galaxy, and it's up to Titus and his Ultramarine brothers to stop them. So yeah, the story is pretty basic, but it gets the job done. The threat to the Imperium, the need to band together with my brothers in arms to lay waste to Tyranid and heretic swarms gave me all the motivation I needed to push on. There's some nice twists and turns that leave you wanting more, and some truly holy crap awesome moments, like the rallying to the banner or the march into the final battle. I love the camaraderie between the Space Marines too, just yelling, "Brother!" really gets you pumped. From the moment you launch Space Marine 2, it's all about three things: combat, combat, and caring for brothers. Just kidding, it's combat. It slams you directly into the front lines where you utterly decimate everything in your path with brutal weaponry and brotherly tactics. It truly captures the feeling, I imagine, of being a walking tank, with the controller vibrating at every footstep to really sell that weight. It's fast, fluid, and gorily satisfying. Whether you're cutting through Tyranids with a chainsword or watching them disintegrate with a bolter, every action feels meaty, weighty, and impactful, and I can taste those words. Almost immediately, I was struck by how well they managed to balance challenging you with empowering you. It never feels unfair, even when the screen is swarming with enemies. Sure, there are some moments that'll make you curse under your breath or even curse out loud, but it's in those moments of frustration that really make the adrenaline rush of eventually plowing through a tough horde of Xenos with sword arms feel so rewarding. A huge part of what makes it feel so satisfying is the execution system. If you played the first Space Marine or the Doom games, you know exactly what this kind of system's about. When you finish enemies with an execute, you gain back some health and armor. This leads to an in-game chase of chaining executions into melee flurries, followed by perfectly timed bolter blasts. Because the only way to survive is to keep pushing into the horde. Backing down is never an option. I love that each weapon set has its own unique executions too, so they never get old. They just make you feel incredible, like some kind of unstoppable alien slayer conducting a symphony of visceral destruction. Oh, I love that line. Speaking of weapons, each one feels unique and serves a specific purpose. The bolter, the backbone of a Space Marine's loadout, delivers a satisfying and meaty punch with every single shot. The chainsword, a chainsaw with a hilt, surprise, was my personal favourite for the first half of the game. I felt like my local butcher having a fever dream. That was until I got my hands on the Thunder Hammer, and let's just say, enemy grunts pop like pimples on a prepubescent teen's face if that face was under a hydraulic press. If that visual image is unappealing to you, it's because I can't actually show you the footage we got, so here's a dramatic reenactment we filmed earlier today. Boss fights were also a massive highlight and clearly took note of the genre that does boss battles best, the Souls-likes. There's a grandness to them, and a stiff challenge that never feels cheap, but demands you master the moveset and the stages to emerge victorious. One standout for me was Lictor, an absolute jerk that can disappear and reappear, which confused the heck out of me, but once I understood his patterns, it was very rewarding to beat. Also, some of the magical bosses you face later really made me appreciate the incredible and deep world building of the Warhammer universe. On that note, the atmosphere here is something else. Every environment, enemy, and planet feel truly unique, and they've somehow made these fantastical sci-fi settings feel like real places. It really felt like Space Marine 2 plonked a helmet on me and shipped me out to the front lines of an apocalyptic sci-fi war zone where I was just another overpowered grunt on the battlefield. And visually, Space Marine 2 is a treat. From little details like how blood splatter slowly builds up through missions on your armor, to the fact that levels often look like they're art pieces. Not to mention the almost deranged fixation on gory animations. Strange it doesn't support HDR though. I think that really would have made the visuals pop. But I mean, as it is, it's still very good. So good, in fact, it made me want to go out and buy a bunch of miniatures to paint, just so I could spend some more time in this world. Now, I played Space Marine 2 on the Xbox Series X in performance mode, and it ran pretty well until the hordes got overwhelming, which caused the frame rate to noticeably drop. Overall, it's very polished, although I did find the way NPCs jitter up and down on elevators tore me away from the immersion during those important bits of dialogue. Brother, I am so sorry, it's hard to take what you're saying seriously right now. Before we go any further, audio design deserves a special mention. You really feel the weight of combat through the sound of bolter fire, chainswords grinding, and the satisfying crunch of the Thunderhammer. If you ever get the chance to play this game with surround sound, you are in for a treat. Although one gripe is how radio chatter and in-person dialogue would sometimes overlap.
You look tired, Merrick. I have not slept.
Shifts extended to 22 hours until further notice. Additional recap rushes will be issued.
Guys, I need you to shut up one at a time. The main campaign is a total power fantasy, but a little on the short side, delivering around 6 hours of gameplay, though you will get more out of it if you play in co-op mode. You do get slightly nerfed in co-op mode to balance things out during the campaign a bit, but I feel this is made up for by the fact that you and your friends get different abilities, like the Berserker mode or this battle cry which pushes enemies back. Outside of the main campaign, there is endgame content in the form of 2 main multiplayer options, with a 6v6 PvP offering and 3-player PvE operations. Unfortunately, this didn't hit as hard for me and was mired by some technical issues. Trying to join the story-based operations through quick play resulted in teleporting my teammates and I back to the lobby where I couldn't use any menus or interact with anything, forcing me to close the game just as brutally as the execution system. Eventually, I did get it to work by selecting an operation directly rather than through quick play, but ultimately these just didn't hit the same as the main campaign. You are heavily nerfed, I guess to be more balanced and competitive, but that raw feeling of brutal power just feels robbed. It's a shock to the system, and I really wish that OP-ness had translated from the campaign. PvE left me feeling much the same way. I do think that a balanced multiplayer really just ruins the power fantasy for me. For example, the jetpack in the campaign allows you to rule the skies, raining death from above, but in PvP, it's a glorified dashing mechanic. So, with all that being said,
I loved Space Marine 2's incredible combat, immersive atmosphere, and the 40k universe setting. I had a blast slaying hordes of enemies in one of the most iconic sci-fi universes ever created. The only downsides were the short campaign, the quick play bugs, and the multiplayer that just didn't quite work for me. It has solid PvE mechanics and a killer setting, impressive representation of a beloved universe, and lastly, the Thunderhammer. Play.